Thanks everyone for joining this afternoon or this morning, depending on where you are. This is John Pearson. I'm John Pearson with Prime Communications. We're going to give everybody another minute or so to join, and then we'll get started. Okay, well, it's 12:01, so we may as well go ahead and get started. And those that can join will join us when they can. Again, my name is John Pearson, new business development manager for Prime Communications. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon or this morning, depending on where you were at, and spending 30 minutes with us. Hopefully, we're providing some content that you guys can walk away with some information that's relevant to your organization or your partners. I'll go ahead and do some housekeeping items. So before we get started with the housekeeping items, this session is being recorded for those who cannot attend, so we'll be able to distribute that at a later date. Everyone is muted to minimize the disruption for the audience. The audio will be through the webinar portal, and you will need your computer speakers or headphones to listen to the webinar. Please use the Q&A box in the Zoom platform to send questions directly to myself and Justin. We'll make sure that we get to those and answer those. And at the conclusion of the webinar, the attendees will receive a $30 DoorDash gift card. And attendees must stay till the end of the session. It's 30 minutes, so hopefully we can keep you on board for 30 minutes. Again, my name is John Pearson. I've spent 20-some plus years in business development, consulting, IT consulting with small and medium-sized to enterprise businesses throughout my career. Really, the goal that I have always had is how do I help our clients become more successful? And that's what really drives me. Justin Eckstein is also going to be a panelist on this. And he has spent several years in the IT areas, including education, government, private sector. He has been an engineer for the last 10 years. And again, his philosophy is very similar to mine, is we're here to help and assist in any way that we can, provide content and actionable information. Give you a little background on Prime Communications and a little bit of history on our organization. We've been around since 2001, started as an infrastructure cabling company in 2001. That evolved into a physical security and networking company, physical security in 2006, and infrastructure network services in 2009. And so we worked with a number of organizations, both large and small, trying to help them achieve their goals and their successes along the way. We completed projects in all 50 states last year. We've got capabilities in not only the engineering, the design, being able to procure equipment, implementation, and then project management beyond that. Our organization, really the success of our organization is the people and the culture that has been created. We're all making sure that we row in the same direction. And that's really, really important when it comes to delivering service and making sure that expectations are correctly set and that we meet those or exceed those expectations going forward. Some of the partners that we work with today, we work with really the best of breed when it comes to partners out there. If you look at the Gartner quadrant, which some of you may or may not be familiar with, these partners are all in that upper quadrant and really leaders in the industries. So Aruba from a networking standpoint, wireless, wired aspect, Axient from a business continuity, disaster recovery, backup situation, Axis is the camera solutions that we use on the security side, and then CommScope on the cabling. Genetec is also the physical security software that runs the access controls and cameras. Microsoft, which everybody knows, and then Palo Alto from a firewall standpoint, and Silver Sky is a partner from the managed firewall email protection services. Some of the clients we work with here kind of span all kinds of different industries. There's some in the EDU space, some in the higher ed space. Obviously, there's some enterprise organizations there as well. They've got footprints across the country. The neat thing about our organization is we have the capability to provide nationwide support and service and implementation, but we also have the ability to provide localized managed IT services as well. I'm going to turn this over to Justin and let him walk through some of the reasons why Prime launched the managed IT services and a little bit of the impetus behind that.
Yeah, thank you, John. As John mentioned, my name is Justin Eckstein, a solution engineer here at Prime. And so, why did we start Prime Managed in the managed IT services? Why did we decide to go into that? So as John mentioned, we've been doing network installation services for quite a while, really where we would do projects, do an install, and then kind of walk away from it, and maybe do some triaging, troubleshooting, and as needed. But we realized that we have a lot of clients out there that really have that need for that ongoing support and service. And we have pictured here, actually, this is ransomware. So everybody's probably heard of it. Not a lot of people have probably actually seen it, although that's increasing every single day. This is a picture that we actually received via text message from a company that we were talking to about a month ago. We were talking about some of the security and cybersecurity things that we could help them with. They sent us this message that they got hit with ransomware just a few days later after we actually had those discussions with them, and they asked us if we could help. So this is what actual ransomware looks like. It may not look like much, but what you see here, though, is a demand for payment. And this particular organization, they were not able to get into any of their files. They weren't able to get to their email. They were not able to get to any of their applications, and they really couldn't do anything. And this particular case, this was actually a co-op, and as you know, harvest is happening right now. So this was a huge problem for them, and they didn't really know where to turn. They came to us looking for help. So I just wanted to show that picture to you. Not a lot of people really understand what ransomware is or what to look for, but this is actually what it looks like when you see it firsthand. And so, what does ransomware really do? Well, it locks up all of your files. It encrypts them so that you can't get to them. Basically, it kind of scrambles all of the information, and those hackers, they take that one key and they keep it for themselves, and they hold it ransom. So they essentially prevent you from getting to your information. And you have two options at that point. You can either pay the ransom, so they're asking for money for you to get your information back, or in that particular case, we were able to assist that client restore from backups. So those are really your two options in recovering from ransomware. And ransomware is obviously devastating. Either you have to pay this fine, or best case, you don't have to pay the fine, but then you spend hours upon hours, on average about 21 days recovering from backup and getting everything wiped clean and getting all of your data restored. And that can quite honestly end some businesses out there. It's very scary, and this stuff is increasing. This particular case, it happened right in our backyard. So a lot of people think, this can't happen to me. Why would anybody attack me? What do I have of value? Matter of the fact is, they don't necessarily see value in your particular data per se. They know that your data is valuable to you and also to your competition. So they know that if they are able to hold your information and keep it from you, that they can make money because you're willing to pay for it to get it back. Or if you're not willing to pay for it, maybe somebody else is. So that really is is what's happening today. Ransomware is probably the most common thing that's happening out there, or at least one of the most devastating things that's happening. And it's really jumped up 148% just in this last year. In the last month, I think it was over almost 20 different co-ops in Iowa alone got hit with ransomware, which is just crazy to me. So back to, why did we start Prime Managed? We see these things, we see how the landscape of technology is changing, and we want to help. We know that we can provide service that people just simply aren't getting anywhere else. We can employ email security, threat detection, and partner with proper security controls and security operations center to really get people what they need. So I just want to kind of provide a quick overview of some of the services that we're providing as part of our managed IT solution. So we're trying to make this as fixed cost as possible and really truly be easy to do business with. So in our mind, what that means is providing unlimited service desk support and fixed cost, including things like on-site support and after-hour support and weekend support, not charging you every time that you make a phone call to us. Simply a fixed cost. If you have a problem, you can make a call and get to us. We'd rather solve the little problems rather than somebody wait because they don't, they're scared of getting a bill or something, and get us those little things before they become big things. We're taking a security focused approach, and I think that kind of just gets glossed over, and people hear about security, but I think a lot of times they just assume that what they're doing is good enough. And in a lot of cases, it's not. We really are trying to go above and beyond and do as much as possible here. So an example being, generally everybody has some kind of firewall in place that's doing some basic protection of some kind. What most people are not doing is enrolling that firewall into a 24/7 firewall monitoring service, where actual security experts are reviewing the logs and really checking to make sure that things are okay, that there are no breaches that are happening behind the scenes that you simply aren't aware of. A lot of times you might have a breach but really not find out about it until maybe months down the road. Endpoint detection and response. So that's a fancy term for really good antivirus, essentially. So everybody has antivirus or has used it, but that whole landscape has really been changing. These threats are continually changing. They're not the same. You might have heard of things like 0-day threats. Basically, these are threats that we've never seen before. They morph, they become something new, and your traditional antivirus simply isn't able to recognize these things. They haven't seen them before. Those traditional antiviruses typically say, yeah, this is a good piece of software that I've seen before, or this is a bad piece of software that I've seen before. And that's how they judge whether or not to allow something to run. Well, anymore, you can't do that because you just haven't seen these pieces of software before. And so instead you have to look at the behavior of the software. Is it being used in a proper way? Is somebody, escalating their privileges or running a sequence of commands that, isn't typical? This is something that would typically harm a system to do this sequence of commands rather than something to, install Adobe Reader or something like that. So those are the kinds of things that we're trying to look at and be on the lookout for. Email is another big one. A lot of people have migrated to Office 365 or G Suite, for example, and these cloud services, but not a lot of people have really gone through the effort of employing proper security on email. So over 95% of threats today come through email, and we are doing everything that we can to protect against that. Look at the links within emails, the behavior of the person that you're emailing or receiving an email from. Is this a conversation that you've had with this person before? Or is this kind of atypical, something that you wouldn't typically talk to this person about? So those are some of the things that we're also looking at. And obviously, with all of this put together, backups is really key, not only just for on-premise systems, but also cloud systems. I think a lot of people put things up into the cloud just assuming that everything's okay and that it's as good as it can be, and that certainly that person's backing up my data. Not always the case. Even companies like Microsoft and Google, for example, they expect you to utilize your own backup service of some kind. If your information were to get corrupt, or if you deleted it and waited 30 days, for example, you might not be able to get that information back if you don't have a proper backup service in place, even for cloud services. So those are some things that I think people also don't typically think of, that we're making all of this just part of our standard package. And last but not least to me is end user education. So really we can put all these tools into place that we want, but if you're not properly educating your employees, you're really leaving a huge gap there. That's the weak spot generally. People are targeting people. So whether that's through email or some kind of social engineering or what have you, or baiting them to click on a link, visit a website and enter credentials. These things happen, and they happen very quickly and very easily. And so if you're not educating your employees and actually testing them to see if that education is actually working, I think you're kind of missing the point, and really leaving yourself open for attack there. On top of the technology and the support, I think another key part of a good managed IT service provider, and one that you really build a relationship with, is having proper planning resources and reporting resources. So all of our clients are going to have the ability to do regular business reviews with us. We'll put together extensive reporting and dashboards. So the whole purpose there is to keep in regular touch with our clients, understand where they're at in their business. If they're able to budget for certain kinds of technology replacements, and where they want to go with their technology. I think it's easy to get caught up in that stuff, and we really don't want to catch anybody by surprise with a warranty expiring on a critical piece of equipment or things like that. It's best for that all to be planned out, have a real roadmap created that we can all share together and plan out together, and then not really have any of those fiscal surprises, I guess, when it comes to technology. Instead, let's plan it all out and do what we can to really have it all as prepared as possible, and just get all on the same page. Obviously, all of our patching services and everything are all included as part of this as well. But I think having access to that technology resource that you can really rely on and talk to and bounce ideas off of on a regular basis, and really roadmap and plan things out. I think that's key anymore. We do have a few client success stories we wanted to share, just to kind of talk about, I guess, some of the capabilities that we have. This is a relatively new offering for us, but we've already been able to employ our services in a number of different ways. So we're just kind of hitting on a few things here. One example being, we had a local manufacturing company. They reached out to us with a server outage. So they were completely down for an entire morning, and they had an IT provider, and that IT provider simply wasn't responding. So they called us. We were able to remote onto these systems that we had never seen before, and we're able to diagnose it not as a server problem, but actually a network issue. And we were able to roll a truck and get a resource on site, get that piece of equipment replaced and up and running. Within less than 2 hours, we were able to get them completely up and running. So I thought that was a great testament to our not only troubleshooting capabilities, but also the ability to respond in a situation where we really just weren't expecting anything there, to be honest. So I thought that was a great opportunity for us there. And then we've also done, we have a lot of clients that we do cabling and physical security for in the education space. And so, we had one local college reach out to us. If anybody doesn't know, auditors are out there, and the education space specifically is getting hit really hard with audits right now. multi-factor authentication being one of those things, not only for email, but also for server logins, logins to all your network equipment. Can be a really big task for a college that might have a very small IT staff, but thousands of students. We were able to respond there and get multi-factor authentication set up for all of those systems, as well as we also were able to deploy some redundant server farms. So I thought that was another great way for us to get some great feedback and experience on some of these other solutions, especially in some of these larger environments, and show our capabilities there. And then last but not least, one of those co-ops that I mentioned that got hit with ransomware had reached out to us on a Monday morning. We were able to send some technicians out to help them start wiping computers and provide them guidance on how to properly recover from ransomware and not really have anything stick around. We were able to provide migration services. They had an on-premise email server at the time. We migrated them to Office 365, employed proper email security tools, security awareness training tools as well, and then also endpoint protection, and are in conversations with some other security tools as well. So I thought there was a great opportunity there for us to show kind of the breadth of what we're able to do and how we're able to respond, especially in those crisis scenarios that can easily put organizations out of business. So that was a really great win for our team to be able to show what we can do and how we can respond in those situations. So I guess we can have some time here to kind of leave that up to the group if there are any questions, or John, if you had anything that you wanted to add.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm not afraid to talk. I like to talk, but a couple, elaborate on a couple things. Is I've been doing this long enough to know that, when you look at audits and exams, I mean, in the banking industry, that's been happening for the better part of 10 plus years, right? They've got regular audits and exams that are happening that are looking into their IT and their infrastructure and that. I would say that, and it usually was, and it used to be isolated to that industry. That isn't the case anymore. I mean, if you work with any sort of government entity, we just had on the higher education space, K-12. Right now, if you have cyber insurance, cybersecurity insurance, and I would recommend strongly that you do if you run a business or have an investment in any sort of organization that definitely do that. But one thing that we're seeing, and you're probably seeing it as well, is that those premiums aren't going down, and the minimum requirements in order to keep those premiums at a certain level are increasing, and they're needing you to do more and more things. And so that's some of the reasons and the impetus of why we built this solution or built the program the way we did. And not to mention the fact that we've got years of experience and know kind of what works and what doesn't work. But the main focus for us was to make sure that we didn't have our clients exposed or gaps in their support and their security. So that was really why we built this. I know there's a number of them out there that have, silver, gold, platinum, extra platinum, whatever programs out there. And we didn't feel like we wanted to skimp or have a gap in any of those solutions. So that's why we built it the way we did. And it's going to evolve. It's going to continue to evolve. And that's why those quarterly or regular business reviews are so critical, because, a couple of years ago, Justin had mentioned that endpoint protection piece. There was a certain standard or a certain breed that was best in breed, 2 years ago. That isn't the case anymore. You need to have a different security alignment there, and that's going to continue to evolve and continue to change. They're not great conversations to have, but they're necessary. I would strongly encourage a business owner to really ask their IT provider. I know no one wants to spend any time talking about IT for the most part, but I would encourage them to ask those difficult questions to their IT provider to make sure that they feel comfortable with where things are at, where things are going, what plans are in place to address those things. Because at the end of the day, you've got to have, it's a partnership and it's a collaboration, and you've got to have 100% confidence and trust in the provider that you're working with. And what was true 10 years ago isn't true today, and what's going to be true in 5 years isn't true today. So it's one of those things where you really got to have a true partnership, an organization that's looking out for your organization's best interest, and really walking through what a need is, what you'd like to have, and what is absolutely critical in today's world to be able to preserve your reputation as an organization and a business. It does look like maybe I had a question. Oh, it just looks like a thing. I do have a question though that was provided us ahead of time. And one of the questions, Justin, is I'll send this over to you, is, how can, in this remote world that we're living in, and obviously post-pandemic, and the fact that you've got the remote workforce in place, how can organizations better protect themselves in an increasingly mobile and remote working world?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think it's all about layers of security to me. So examples being one of the easiest things to do. I know it can be a little bit annoying, but multi-factor authentication is really key right now. It's so easy for passwords to get leaked, even if you're diligent. So really utilizing multi-factor authentication for resources like email, any cloud resource really, as well as things like VPN for remote access. So making sure that you're employing MFA, I think is a really big one. Using things like always on VPN, or a cloud firewall of some kind, where no matter where you're located, you're still sitting behind a firewall that's providing things like web content filtering or intrusion prevention services. That's a really big one. So that, if you're working from home or something like that, you still have some protection when you're browsing the web or utilizing your company resources. And then things like mobile device management are really increasing in popularity, and I think that's a really big one. Being able to lock down apps, make sure that information isn't leaking out into people's personal drop boxes and things like that. It can really be hard to manage, and I think having tools like that in place are really key. And then also I've seen a really big spike in organizations providing laptops to their employees and not expecting them to use like a personal computer for work purposes, and that's great. It allows you to control things like patching, endpoint protection, and then also disk encryption and a number of other security technologies. So I think really just providing the proper resources like that for employees to work remotely effectively, I think is key, because then you can really make sure that they're utilizing proper resources and security techniques to protect the organization as a whole, really.
Great. And I do have one more question. With the move to the cloud, is my data really safe?
It's another good one. So I hit on that just a little bit with some of the backups, right? But yeah, so I think in general, yes. Information and your data is generally going to be a little bit more safe with a cloud provider for reasons like they can usually leverage a lot more sophisticated security technology than you can afford to employ to protect your own local Exchange server, for example, right? So in places like Microsoft, for example, they've got thousands of security engineers and lots of resources to protect information up in their cloud, versus what limited resources you might have available to protect your own local resources. But aside from that, you do have to still go through your own precautions, making sure that whatever cloud provider you're working with, you have a very clear understanding of where your data is located. The good providers will give you information like whether it's a handout or they have information available online that really talks about where your information is actually being stored. Is it being encrypted so that it's difficult for somebody to steal? Is it being backed up? Who has access to your data? Those things are typically documented for really reputable companies. And if you're working with, a smaller company, you need to ask those things. You need to get it in writing. Really read the T's and C's from these providers that you're working with, and don't make any assumptions. I think that's the big one. A lot of people make assumptions that, well, I'm sure they're taking care of it, right? And then something happens and they find out, well, they really weren't, or they really weren't backing up my information like I just assumed they would. So I think ask questions. That's probably the biggest one, and start to get things in writing. I think that's becoming more apparent than ever, that you really need to understand, who you're working with and what they're actually providing. And let's not make assumptions as to where your information is and how and who is caring for it.
Great. Thanks so much, Justin. Really appreciate it. It looks like we're right at 12:30, right at 30 minutes. Thank you all for being a part of this. We really appreciate it. If you have any questions or have anything follow up and you don't want to necessarily speak in front of the group, understandably, just send us a note. Obviously, here's a way to scan to schedule a free network assessment, and then also receive a month of free service as well. So thank you guys very much for attending. Really, really appreciate your time today, and have a good rest of the week. Take care.